Today we're delving into a common problem, understanding Spanish but struggling to speak fluently. I'll unveil 5 key steps to bridge this gap so you can speak with confidence. Me gustaría ayudarte a hablar español con fluidez. If you're new here, g'day mates, my name's Matthew. I used to work for Fluent Forever and was mentored by the American polyglot and best-selling author Gabriel Weiner. Since I've branched out on my own, I've realized that I just love learning languages. And I'm here today because I've developed my own techniques and tools, and I'd love to share them with you. If that interests you, then consider subscribing to this channel. So are you at a point with your Spanish where you can understand Spanish books and Spanish newspapers and websites? You can even listen to and comprehend Spanish songs and Spanish audiobooks and podcasts. But your one major problem is that when it comes to speaking Spanish, you are tongue-tied. You just can't speak fluently in Spanish and it's frustrating you. Well, I know how you feel because I was in the same situation a few years ago. I was studying Spanish for work and one of my goals was to achieve a Spanish DELE exam certificate. I understood a lot of Spanish through reading and listening, and I thought I was fluent. Some linguists and language learners propose that you could actually be fluent in spoken Spanish just by reading and listening, and I believe them. So I was really great at understanding Spanish and thought when I did the exam the first time around, speaking should also be simple because I know so many words already. I can understand what's generally going on. Boom, the reality hit me when I actually failed that Spanish DELE exam because I had a really poor speaking score. My speaking score was only 39% and it devastated me. My ideas of fluent Spanish were dashed aside. I also wondered why I could understand Spanish, but I couldn't speak it so well. After doing a lot of trial and error, reevaluating my strategy and doing more research, I changed my approach. And here are the 5 steps that helped me to speak Spanish fluently that I'd love to share with you. 1. Expand your Spanish vocabulary. Now you say you understand Spanish, but I'd like to question that a little. And you might want to question that yourself too. I found that when I watched Spanish movies and read some Spanish books that had pictures in them, I realized that I was actually relying on certain visual cues and context to fill in the gaps in my Spanish vocabulary. I understood generally what was going on in movies and in picture books or in certain situational contexts. But in reality, if I were just to read or listen to the words being said, I actually wouldn't be able to understand all of the nuances of what was going on. In a movie, for instance, the character could say, "La vida es como una caja de chocolates. Nunca sabes qué te va a tocar." And in this case, I may see someone giving a box of chocolates to someone, but in reality, if I just heard that phrase, I may not have known what the words tocar was or caja was, but I generally got the gist of what was going on because I could see in the visuals of the movie what was going on. And I would think to myself, hey, I understand what's going on. So that example shows you how you may understand Spanish or think you do because the visual cues and context are actually helping you, but you may not actually understand the actual words being said. And if you took out the words on its own and you placed them into a book or a sign, you would have no clue what was going on. And if you needed to speak those words, you also couldn't use them because the visual cues and context are no longer there to support you. So I suggest if this is a problem for you, then you need to really build up your vocabulary in Spanish And I strongly suggest start off with the most common words in Spanish, around the 2000 mark. And if you want to get even more fluent, even up to around 5000. When you know these most frequently used Spanish words, then you're able to understand Spanish in a lot of context and you really actually know what's going on. Plus, you're able to use common, frequently used words in your speech. And with that set of words, you'll be able to go out into various contexts and use a combination of those common words to convey what you want to say. 2, master connector words and Spanish grammar. If you find that you can understand Spanish, but when it comes to stringing Spanish words together, the problem may actually be that you don't know the right connector words to string your sentences together. These connector words are often found in grammar books and they're so useful. 5 Spanish connector words that you need to know include pero, which means but, además, which means also, mientras, which means while, después, after, aunque, although. Now there are even more Spanish connector words. Try out different connectors and find out the gaps in your Spanish and figure out which connectors would be useful for the context where you want to speak and express certain things. When you learn connector words and grammar really well, then you'll be able to seamlessly connect your words and your thoughts. 3, practice basic conversation skills. One reason why you can't speak Spanish fluently might just be your skills with conversations. Maybe you don't know how to converse well in Spanish yet. And so it might be useful to learn some basic conversation starters, some phrases that help you to get a conversation with a native speaker going. You can learn some basic conversation questions such as ¿Cómo estás? ¿Qué tal? ¿De dónde vienes? ¿A qué te dedicas? These basic questions can help you feel confident so you know what to say at the very beginning, just as an opening line. And of course, start learning and even memorizing some basic responses that you can say, such as estoy bien, todo va bien, estoy cansado, or soy de Australia. If it helps you, you could also write out these basic conversation starters, basic questions and simple responses and try and memorize them. When you have confidence in these basics, then that helps set the stage to have more fluent conversations. 4, ditch translations and embrace thinking in Spanish. Another reason why you can understand Spanish but you can't speak fluently might be because you've been relying too much on English translations. When you rely too much on English translations or whatever your native language is, it can delay the amount of time it takes for you to ask a question or respond, and therefore to speak fluently in Spanish. So I suggest that you minimize the time that you're translating or just stop translating altogether so you can think directly in Spanish. This mental switch reduces that speech delay that you may have and therefore increases your spoken Spanish fluency. When you learn new Spanish words, I strongly suggest that you try and minimize the amount of English that you're using to learn that new word. So for example, if you're using flashcards to learn new Spanish words, try out pictures instead of translations to learn that Spanish word. Instead of using the word seat to learn the word asiento, you could actually show a picture of a seat. I've also got some other tips and techniques for how to stop translating in your head so you can create like a second brain in a foreign language like Spanish. So check that out. 5, build confidence and overcome your shyness. Even though you understand Spanish, you might also be unable to speak fluently just because of your personal emotions. You might feel shy or anxious, stressed, or even feeling some self-doubt about yourself. And that could be preventing you from going out there and speaking Spanish fluently. I can personally relate to you because I am a bit more introverted, where I get more energy, frankly, at home and with just closer people. And so sometimes going out there and having small chats with different people can sometimes be awkward for me. And if you feel the same way, then I suggest that you can try fluent Spanish speaking activities at home for practice. You can do these activities alone or even online. You could even write to first practice your speeches. And when you gain more confidence, you can then engage in social interaction. One thing I've learned about speaking languages and communication overall is that sometimes it's not about the words that you actually say, but it can be about how you feel and also the body language that you express. So you might have to focus, in this case, on your body language. Try and make better eye contact with other Spanish speakers, and maybe even consider how you gesture at them using your hands and your shoulders and your face and your expressions. That might be actually your next step to help you become more fluent in Spanish. And that's okay. You can practice all of that in the mirror at home where you're comfortable. You can record yourself speaking. And I've actually got another video where I go into more depth about speaking practice all on your own. And that might be a great resource just for you. So I actually implemented a lot of these strategies for studying the second time round. I did the Spanish Dele exam. And in that second go, I actually got a 94% speaking score. I was pumped. I was so happy. Finalmente, pude hablar español con fluidez. Me sentí feliz. That 94% score really made me happy. And I strongly believe that if you implement these sort of techniques and strategies as well, that you can transform your understanding of Spanish into actual spoken fluency.